Batman is known throughout Gotham as someone who constantly takes down criminals and other various superpowered individuals. And some of his most famous stories also come from Halloween night. So what if on this night he has to face off against horror gaming's most iconic villains? Today we're going to be going into that with comparing Arkham Batman against some of the strongest characters within horror video games. For this, we'll be using Arkham Batman from the 4 mainline games and the canon spin-offs such as Blackgate and Shadow. Any canon guidebooks and comics are also fair game. I won't be including Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League just for fairness and because I really don't want to talk about that horrid excuse for a game. Arkham Batman will also be getting no prep time, and he will be given a random scenario he is called to with limited information, and he does have to beat them within one night, kind of Arkham Knight style. So let's start off by scaling Arkham Batman. Arkham Batman is an extremely strong fighter, constantly being trained throughout his life, even since he was a wee little lad. And this gets him into those small building to large building tiers of power easily, with arguments for him even being from the city block to multi-city block tiers of power. This is not only be the explosive gel, which the destruction causes enough to wipe out small buildings, with not only in-game Batman taking it, Killer Croc, a character who Batman has punched the teeth out of before, and even stronger versions he is still contested in the comics. He has taken 3 of those explosive gels at once to the face and was pretty much fine, and then even a large fall afterwards, and he's still alive and kicking, making he's pretty high in a small building. This is consistent with Bane, who is considered our lesser than opponents like Deathstroke, and Batman taking this attack as well as other hits from Bane, busting through walls with enough force to destroy small buildings. And once again, Batman can't even take hits from him consistently. And also obviously gets stronger between the games, with his Arkham Knight self being the strongest one as of the mainline trilogy, or quadrilogy. However, you can get them high with the aforementioned Killer Croc in an origin comic, taking the explosion that destroyed the entire pier of an amusement park. This goes from the large building to multi-city block tiers of power for a high-end calculation. This is before the stronger, more evolved Croc got his ass beaten by Batman on 2 separate occasions. And then in the Arkham Knight prequel comic, the Arkham Knight takes the explosion of the Arkham Asylum, which in the game, obviously Batman beats him up while holding back and is conflicted. This explosion being calculated to the multi-city block tiers of power. For speed, Batman is a consistent bullet timer, rocket timer, and so on, even seeing bullets in slow motion at several points, with his highest end of speed coming from the fact that Catwoman has dodged lightning before, so when even an Origins Batman could be up at one point in Blackgate while blinded, arguably making him massively hypersonic plus. With tons of tech, electric guns, smoke bombs, freeze grenades, explosive gel, batarangs, grappling hook, etc. Tech for disabling weapons. He even has a form of precognition he just gained by being so training so much, and his gauntlets can absorb and redirect kinetic energy. Now let's see how he stacks up against horror's best gaming icons, starting with arguably the most iconic franchise, Resident Evil, and I'll be comparing him against 2 of likely the most popular antagonists from the franchise, Nemesis and Wesker. Starting with Nemesis, specifically using the remake version, he would range from the small to large building tiers of power, with it being more consistent that he's large building in his higher forms, with his lesser forms being taken out by lesser explosions, but also taking some things like gas station explosion and oil tanker explosions, which is how he gets into these tiers of power. With his speed ranging from the subsonic to supersonic range, with him reacting to rockets, who compares to Jill, who reacts to Leon, who has his own supersonic feats by his point. With his T-virus, he can infect others and even make people into zombies, and his adaptation is quite impressive, so how does he fare against bats? Nemesis might actually lose against bats, as he actually not only has arguably lesser AP than Batman of all things, considering Nemesis and Killer Croc relatively have similar AP, and well, as again, Batman kind of beats his ass. And he's definitely much slower, which means not only is he have lesser AP, Batman is also simply much faster. But Nemesis does have obviously his adaptation, which maybe could give him the upper hand. However, considering Batman has things such as freeze grenades, which could very similarly be used in a way as Clayface, to where he simply just traps Nemesis, or maybe he just knocks Nemesis out, Batman should get a pretty quick dub here, with struggle, but he should get the win. Nemesis really isn't all too similar from someone like the likes of Bane, or Solomon Grundy. Just a really big brute, except this time he can infect people. So Nemesis is really not that different. Wesker, on the other hand, is much more of a challenge. Wesker being the strongest opponent in the franchise to this point that Chris and Jill have faced, and the strongest tyrant up to this point as well. Meaning he would upscale everything so far, including the city block JPE of the infected tyrant whale combined with a ship, as well as the town-level earthquakes created by the final boss of Resident Evil 4. Since Wesker is stronger than both of these characters, he would simply upscale off, with Wesker actually flat out dodging lightning and explosions, getting him to a massively hypersonic degrees of speed. And even not only has an instant healing factor from lost limbs, disembowelment, and tissue fragments of all things, having a sense of adaptation as well, with his Ouroboros infection allowing him to infect his opponents if he lands a hit, and even his intelligence is nothing to scoff at for a Resident Evil character standards, or for even Batman. Creating a super virus, being a master manipulator and tricking stars, a government agency, and knowing several combat styles. Now this is much more of a challenge, with both being the same speed and Wesker actually being stronger than Batman. Being comparable in intelligence and skills, even if lesser, it's not a humongous gap. And even the virus, which we know toxins such as Copperheads, Joker's blood, and Scarecrow all work on him, made by relatively normal people, no reason a super virus shouldn't work on him out of all things. And unlike Nemesis, Wesker can react to Batman's freeze grades to deal with his regeneration, in which his regeneration is simply much more impressive than Nemesis' too, with Wesker simply being able to simply overpower Batman if he wanted to, and with Batman having no real counter, even if he does get a good hit, to either his regeneration or the T-Virus. And while Batman does have a lot of gear that can keep Wesker on edge, once again the freeze grenades, the absorption of his kinetic energy with his gauntlets, which would be very useful on a stronger opponent, and it's just general greater arsenal to keep Wesker at range and constantly at toes. It is not impossible for Batman to win, but I think more times than not in a random encounter, I think Wesker would likely beat the Bat in. If Batman were to be given more time, I think Batman could definitely devise a plan to deal with Wesker, though Wesker is also incredibly smart, so it's very possible Wesker could think ahead, though obviously Wesker is not as smart as Batman. Next, let's go into another horror series, the Five Nights at Freddy's series, and for this I'll only be talking about Springtrap for now, since the obvious win con of Batman simply short-circuiting like 99% of the cast with his weaponry anyways, we're all just weaker and less hacks-busted than Springtrap anyways. I'll also be talking about Golden Freddy later. Springtrap would range from those building to city block to tiers of power, maybe multi-city block. This is due to him not only upscaling off of things such as the OGs, absorbing building level energy, but also scaling from the Mimic, which statements do compare him to, who can fight against the Blob, who can cause earthquakes throughout the entire Pizzaplex, and dig large underground tunnels throughout the place. Large building to city block to maybe multi-city block level feats. Springtrap bare minimum getting into those sub to supersonic ranges from constant blitzes of humans and gunfire reaction, with things like Puppet being compared to lightning in speed and the Mimic moving in nanoseconds, potentially getting him higher, with the obvious soul hacks, illusion with phantoms, and his immortality allowing to him, as he says, always come back. So while Springtrap definitely has less of a stat gap than someone like Nemesis, Batman is still probably stronger and fast, and they have similar speed ends. The real thing saving William here is his hacks. Batman has no real way to permanently kill William, to trap his soul or to stop him from eventually coming back if he does end up killing him. The illusions could show him trouble, but he's broken out of illusions just by pure willpower, and this isn't some Nemesis, this isn't some Wesker T-virus type shit. So I think he would be fine. And while he cannot permanently kill William, he could incapacitate him and knock him out, kind of lock him up, like he did with other kind of immortal characters, like Solomon Grundy and such, or Man-Bat even. Something also to kind of note is maybe, once again, he can maybe just freeze Batman, or maybe, I don't know if this would be a thing, actually never mind, like freeze William. Obviously, absorbing his kinetic energy and redirecting him back at William is a big problem for William. So I think what would happen is maybe Batman would realize he can't really kill William and just have to incapacitate him and lock him in jail. Or like permanently put William down and just have to keep a close eye on him. Batman would definitely win via the better AP and just like his gear. And, well, what Batman, the phrase of the Mimic could be interesting, as Mimic is a physically stronger Springtrap with less hacks, but Batman could just short-circuit the Mimic along with any other physical robotic animatronic. However, Golden Freddy is where things get a little weird. Golden Freddy should scale to the same ends as Springtrap, as he creates perfect copies of all the animatronics in Ultimate Custom Night, including Afton, and so things like Golden Freddy would have the same scaling. Another character, the Puppet, is able to scare away Eleanor after defeating the Afton amalgamation. So both would just upscale off the same mimic ends that Springtrap has. Except the thing is that Batman can't harm ghosts. It's that simple. He can't beat a character he can't hit, because they're not physical, tangible beings. So they would just kind of win. He can't really kill Remnant or knock it out. None of his hacks or, you know, his tech could counter a ghost. But for the final character on this list and the final verse on this list, after seeing him pretty much go 2 and 2 actually, is Pyramid Head and Silent Hill town in general. Silent Hill monsters are really generally harder to apply to other characters since they deal with character-specific representations, such as in the most recent game, spoilers, the Fog monster being a representation of Himiko herself rejecting her predetermined fate. It's hard to apply that to Batman. But here's something interesting I thought for Pyramid Head. This is more of a thematic narrative thing instead of an actual power scaling thing, as well. In terms of stats, Pyramid is really only around wall. But where it gets interesting is that Pyramid Head is a non-physical, more mental mimetic entity who can't really be killed in the context of the Silent Hill town, as he's a mental projection of James Sunderland's guilt, who punishes his foes for ignoring their guilt, being the executioner for those who can. In fact, what Silent Hill just generally does is it manifests the personal trauma and repressed emotions of the person and forms them into these monsters. This would force Batman to confront his greatest fears, the people he couldn't save ganging up on him as they scream about how he failed him, his parents being turned into twisted, horrific monsters he's forced to fight. Batman, especially in the Arkham series, has made plenty of failures, but can he overcome them? Batman has overcame things like Scarecrow's fear toxin, which are extremely potent, but he's never came across the real supernatural ghosts, manifesting his greatest regrets and failures into terrifying monsters. Zombies, evil masterminds, and tyrants are scary, even for the Dark Knight, but is guilt something you can even overcome? Is Batman's guilt and failure something he can overcome? That's true horror, a horror Batman might not even be able to overcome, but I'll leave that for you guys in the comment section below. So overall, Batman will be able to beat Nemesis and Springtrap, but likely lose to Wesker and Golden Freddy due to Wesker outscaling and Golden Freddy just not really being physical. I really hope you enjoyed our Halloween episode today, and please like, subscribe, and share the video. Peace. And also join the Discord server. Peace.